Hi guys, I'm Anissa and I'm back with another video, and today it's time for my fantasy bingo check-in. It's over halfway through. I'm over halfway through the year. I think it started in April and we're in October, almost end of October, and I just wanted to check in with you, just let you know what I've read and if I have plans to read anything specific for the ones that I haven't read yet. I will leave a link to my TBR up in the cards so you can see what I thought about reading in the beginning, but there's a lot more info about the reading challenge. I really can't say that word. I always want to say channel, it's annoying. Anyway, let's start up from the top of the list and go through the squares one by one. The first square is a novel reviewed on our fantasy, and for that one I read Malice by John Gwynne. This has been one of my favorite fantasy books of this year. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars and I highly recommend you check it out. I still have not made a review of it, and now I don't know if I can make a concise review because it's been a while since I read it. But maybe I'll do a serious review when I finished it instead, so we'll see about that. But highly recommend this book to anyone. The second square is a novel featuring a non-Western setting, and for that I read The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This I also really enjoyed. I read this for the BookTube SFF Awards and I gave it 4.5 stars, definitely deserving of the hype I think, and highly recommend it. I haven't read the sequel yet, but I will get to it in the beginning of next year. I think closer to when the third book comes out, so I can read them both in right after each other, so I don't have to wait around. Square number 3 is read 5 short stories or an anthology. I think I've read a couple of short stories since, but I haven't read 5, and I'm just waiting around to read an anthology of some kind, and we'll add that to fit that one. But we'll see if I get closer. I haven't read an anthology. I will just use whatever short stories I've read. So yeah. Square number 4 is novels adopted by stage, screen, TV or other mediums. Like, this is just the normal task, but you can make it a little harder and do all of these squares in the hard level. And for that you have to choose a book that has both been made into more than one medium. So it could be both like a video game and a TV show or something like that. And I haven't finished anything for that yet, but my aim is to finish The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, The Witcher universe, because it's been made into a video game, but it's also currently being made into a TV show or movie or something like that. And it's my friend's favorite books and I need to get on with them. I have started reading it, but I put it down for reasons. And the 5th book is hopeful speculative fiction, and I don't know if I've read anything that fits this one. I really have a hard time deciding when is something hopeful. I seem to only read books that seems a little more on the less positive side, but I will try and see what I can find in the future. I don't know. I will have to look up hopeful fantasy or something like that and see if something pops up that I can read. Task number 5 is read a fantasy novel that takes place in one city, and that city should be in a secondary world if it's the hard challenge. And I haven't read that yet, not something that's set in another city, but I hope that I will find something that fits. Challenge number 7 is a self-published fantasy book with less than 50 ratings on Goodreads. That's the hard challenge, and I haven't read that yet, but I am currently reading a book that is an arc from a person. I don't think that he has very many reviews or ratings on Goodreads yet, but I don't remember how many, but I'm planning on using that one for that task, and it is a self-published book. And task number 8 is published before I was born, so 10+ years. I have read something that was published before I was born, but nothing that was 10 years more than that. I read something that in the beginning of the 80s. I'm from 86. And just around the 85, 84 era, but I haven't read anything that is like 10 years before my time, so I have to be 76 or before for me to do the hard challenge, and we'll see whether I end up being able to do it. Otherwise I'll use one of those I've read that are older than me and not do the hard challenge. Square number 9, any fantasy Goodreads book of the month, and for that I read Zenlin Ascents. I already finished that back in April and I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this fantasy book. It was a really refreshing type of fantasy, and yeah, I haven't read anything that's quite like it, but still had a lot of those normal fantasy tropes in it, but it was just the setting was quite different and I enjoyed it. And square number 10, reading a book that features a library where the library takes up a central part of the plot. And I haven't read anything that features... I've read something that features a library, but not where the library setting has a very central part to the plot. So we'll see if something pops up in the coming months. So the next one is a historical fantasy that's alternate history book that is not set in the UK or US. And for that one I read City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, or however you say that. This was not my favorite book in the world, but I do recommend it for the atmosphere, for the world building. It was really great. I don't particularly like the characters and the romance aspect and all of that part of it. It didn't really do anything for me, but I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. So if you're into that kind of that kind of books, it will probably be something you'd like. And it is set in ancient Egypt, so it has a Middle Eastern sort of setting. The next square, number 12, is read a book that was published in 2018. For that one I read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This has been really hyped this year, and I read it and I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars when I actually read it, but as I've been thinking more and more about it, it is quite the usual fantasy book. It just has some few other cultural aspects, which I really enjoyed, but I would have liked it to explore more into the cultural aspects and take that part more into the fantasy and make it its own, and it didn't really do that for me exactly. So I think I've lowered my ratings a little bit since reading it, but I did still really enjoy it, and I do highly recommend it because it is a really strong debut, and I am interested in reading the next one to see how she develops as an author. Square number 13. We read a book with a main character who's a writer, artist, or musician and uses that said thing as part of their magic system, as part of the magic. And for that one I read Our Dark Duet by V.E. Schwab, the last and final book in the Monsters of Verity duology. And August, who is one of the main characters of this book, is a monster, and one of the ways that he lures his people in, he uses his violin and his music, and he basically kills people with his music. And so yeah, I figured that would work. And yeah, I didn't love this book, but I did think that it redeemed itself towards the end, and I give it a 3.5 stars. I still think this is one of the better series by V.E. Schwab that I've read so far, so I do recommend it. The next square is read a book that has a mountain setting, where the setting is, and the hard challenge is that the setting should be inside the mountain, and I haven't found anything like that yet. I don't know if I will, but I even have a hard time finding one with a mountain setting, like on a mountain of that kind. So we'll see if I end up actually finishing that one, but we'll see. Square number 15 is read a book that was on the 2017 R-Fantasy Top Novels list. In the bottom half is the hard one. And from that one I read Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book in the Book of the Ancestor series. This I read for the BookTube SFF Awards as well, back in May, I think, or April. I don't remember which month I read it in at this moment, but I definitely really enjoyed it. I've read some other Mark Lawrence books before, but this one, I think, I don't know if it was better, but it's definitely different than the other book that I've read by Mark Lawrence, and I definitely enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars, and definitely recommend it. The next square is read a book that has less than 2,500 ratings on Goodreads. For the hard challenge, it is less than 500 ratings. I did pick one that is not less than 500 ratings, so we'll see if that changes in the future. But when you choose a book like this, it should be a book that has been out for a while, that you know is probably not going to be high on ratings anytime soon, because it's been out for a while. You can't take a 2018 release that you know will be a pretty popular one that's been hyped and use that for the square. That would be kind of cheating. But I did read The Devil's Apprentice, Djævelens Lærling by Kenneth Bøgh Andersen. I think it has around 1,500 ratings on Goodreads, so it's still pretty lowered on the rating, and I want to recommend it because it's one of my favorite Danish authors that I've read so far, and his books have just been translated into English, so it is possible to get the English editions on ebook form from Amazon and iBooks, I think, as well, if you are interested. And the next one is square number 17, which is a one-word title, and the one-word title for the hard one should be one syllable. I looked through my complete TBR to see if I even had something that I could use for this, and I don't. So I end up going with the shortest one-word title that I could go with. And so I read Eric by Terry Pratchett. This is obviously one word, but it doesn't have like only one syllable. So yeah. This is definitely one of my least favorite Discworld novels so far that I've read, but I still really enjoyed moments of it. There was some specific times in this that I really enjoyed, as I usually do with Terry Pratchett, and it's really short, so it goes by really, really quickly. It almost seems like a novella, but it is one of the main Discworld books, so yeah. I gave this 3.5 stars when I read it. The next square is read a book with God as a character, and for the hard challenge is that the God should be one of the protagonists, because I have actually read quite a lot of books where there's a God as part of the books, like that. The Magnus Chase books, there it has half gods, and there are also, it has the Norse gods in the as part of it. But it's not the protagonist. The next one is a book that was written under a pseudonym name, and preferably, if it's just to beat the hard challenge, that the name should have the author should write under more than one name, has more than one pseudonym name. And yeah, I went with one that only has that, as far as I know, one pseudonym name, and that is Robin Hobb, where I read Dragonhaven, and her actual name is Megan Lindholm, so she always writes those books in her pseudonym name. And I love Robin Hobb. This is possibly my least favorite Robin Hobb book so far, and it is Dragonhaven, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Still loved it in a way that I would love Hobb's works, and that's sometimes how I find it difficult, because a 3 stars of Robin Hobb is still possibly a better book than another 3 stars that I've read. So yeah, but I do have to rate these books fairly compared to the other books that I've read by Robin Hobb, and this has definitely been one of my least favorite books that I've read of hers. However, the book after that really made up for it, so I don't mind too much. Square number 20 is read a space opera where the main character is not a space pirate or space military. And I've only read one space book, I think, and that is Fortune's Pawn, but she's a space military person. She's a security person, so I feel like that's part of like a military type group. I'm not sure what to call it, but I'm trying to find something else that's set in space. Square number 21 is read a standalone fantasy, and for that one I read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This has been one of my least favorite books of the year, and I'm very much in the minority of not liking this book. I gave it 2 stars, 2.5 stars. I was really bored while I was reading it, but I do know that a majority of my friends really enjoyed it and gave it 4.5 to 5 stars, all of them. And I do understand part of it, but I just didn't really connect with the story. And yeah, it is a retelling of the Greek mythologies back in the in Trojan Wars and stuff, and it follows Achilles and Patroclus, or however you say his name, I forgot it. And yeah, it's interesting in that, but also a lot of things I found problematic when I was reading it, and it was just not my type of style of writing, and I didn't really love it, so yeah. Read a novel by an RRAWR author, which I don't know what stands for, or keep up with the classics. And I haven't read anything for this one as well. I'll have to go and look at those lists again to see what I can read from this and work my way from there. And the next square is read a book from the R-Fantasy LGBTQ+ list. And I haven't read anything for this one as well. Again, I haven't really looked into that specific list. I have read some LGBT books, but I don't think any of them has been fantasies, and I don't think those that has been fantasies has been on this list. So we'll see. But the next one is read a graphic novel. For that one, I read Monstrous Volume 2, The Blood, and highly enjoyed it. I thought this volume was better than the first one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoy the art style. It is so incredibly beautiful. Like, this is a whole full page, but it's also a dark story, and yeah, definitely not definitely an adult type of graphic novel series. And the last and final square is read a book that features Faye. And for that one, I haven't read anything yet, but we'll see if something pops up in the coming months and that I can read for that. But this was my update on my R Fantasy reading. Let me know in the comments down below if you're participating in the R Fantasy Bingo and how you're doing with your challenge. Have you read any of the books that I've been talking about today, and what were your thoughts on them? Do you have any suggestions to some of the squares that I haven't read anything for yet that you recommend to me? I would also really like to know that, so I can have that in mind when I decide what to read for those challenges. And yeah, that's all I had for you today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye!